Okay, we're moving on to our next invited talk. This talk is by Michele Nardin from IST Austria. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so, well, thank you. I want to thank the organizers for organizing this super cool meeting. And today I want to talk about nonlinear computations in spiky neural networks. So why do we think that they are important? Well, we know that the brain is formed by networks of neurons, and together they solve complicated tasks. For example, something is wrong. Okay. For example, locomotion, but there are many other examples. The hypothesis here is that the brain represents low-dimensional signals, and computation is implemented within these signals in the form of a nonlinear dynamical system. Now, from a single-cell perspective, we know that there are many sources of non-linearities. For example, coincidence detectors, filters, and amplifications, but it is hard in general to pinpoint exactly how these local non-linearities combine together to carry out network computations. Now, from a theoretical perspective, especially within the world of artificial neural networks, it is known that recurrent neural networks with continuous units and nonlinear transfer functions can be trained so as to approximate any given dynamic. On the other side, spiky neural networks are a bit trickier, but also they're using either nonlinear dendrites or nonlinear transfer functions and some specialized training techniques. One can train the network so that the readout resembles the solution to any given dynamical system. Now, these approaches are general, but they lack a principled derivation of the network components and of the nonlinearity. Moreover, they need supervised learning, so it is in general a bit hard to precisely interpret the resulting connectivity. So what we wanted to do here was to derive from first principles a fully interpretable spiky neural network that implements nonlinear dynamical systems. And I want to take just a minute here to explain the setting a bit more in detail. What we want is a network of spiky neurons. In this example, you can see the voltages and the spikes that happen whenever the voltage goes above a certain threshold. And we assume that something is wrong, sorry. And we assume that we can use the filtered spike trains weighted through a decoding matrix D. Something is wrong with my slides. I'm really sorry about that. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can see the slides.
But anyway, I will try to continue. I'm so sorry about this. So what we assume is that we can use the filtered spike trains weighted through a decoding matrix D to read out the activity of the network that is generally called X hat. What we want is the network readout to resemble the solution of a certain dynamical system. And can we do that? And yes, we know how to do that if the dynamical system is linear. And in fact, if you start from the assumptions that the readout is linear and that the network is efficient in the sense that a neuron will spike only if it decreases the error between target and readout signal, you can derive the equations of a network of spiky neurons whose output resembles the solution to the given linear dynamical system. Now, this network requires two types of synapses to work. The fast type, which, as you can see in this schematic, takes its name from the fact that a presynaptic spike, for example, of the red neuron that you can see here, has a very fast effect on the postsynaptic voltage of the connected blue neuron. And on the other side, the slow synapses, which have a slower and longer effect on postsynaptic voltage, as you can see from this small cartoon here. These synapses are very important because they are the ones that are responsible for computation. And from the fact that these networks can compute, they got the name spike coding networks, or they are also known as efficient balanced networks in the literature. They have many cool properties. For example, they show tight excitatory inhibitory balance, they have realistic activity patterns, and they are very robust to noise and cell death. Now, the question is, can we extend this derivation so as to include nonlinear dynamical systems, for example, in the form of a second-degree polynomial? And I just want to open a small parenthesis on notation here. This notation means a Kronecker product applied d times. If you've never heard of it, you can think of a Kronecker product as a generalization of the outer product for matrices. So starting from the same assumptions as before and using some properties of the Kronecker product, we derived the equations for a network of spiking neurons that implements dynamical systems with second-degree polynomial interactions. Now, this is very cool because you can derive every single connection from scratch and you don't need any training. But more importantly, our derivation predicts the existence of an additional set of synapses that we call multiplicative synapses, in the sense that they effectively implement the multiplication among each pair of inputs. So as you can see from this schematic, if each one of the presynaptic neurons fires in isolation, then nothing happens. Whereas if both of these presynaptic neurons fire together, you're going to have an effect on the postsynaptic voltage of the postsynaptic neuron. So you can think a bit of these synapses as coincidence detectors, and these are the synapses that effectively implement nonlinear computations in our network. So the first takeaway from these slides is that under our assumptions, the necessity for multiplicative synapses emerges from derivation. Moreover, this shows exactly how to combine local nonlinearities to achieve network computations. So this is very cool in theory, but you might ask me, do these networks actually work in practice? And the answer is yes. I want to show you a couple of examples here. The first thing that we implemented was the Lorenz system, which is very interesting because it has second-degree polynomials, and due to its chaotic nature, it requires a very, very precise implementation. And we implemented it in two different ways. One with the newly derived multiplicative synapses, and the other with some optimally trained nonlinear dendrites that resembles previous approaches. So if you look at the results, you can see that both implementations work, and you can see by eye that they look quite good. But if you look in detail at the network output and you compare it to the real solution, you can notice that the network with multiplicative synapses can stick to the real solution for much longer. So this already suggests that our implementation is more accurate, and there is essentially a standard ways to analyze the precision of the Lorenz attractor, essentially, which is by plotting consecutive peaks. And these consecutive peaks, if you scatter plot them, they should follow a specific pattern that is plotted here in black, this kind of like upward facing arrow. And you can notice that the network with nonlinear dendrites can follow this pattern quite decently, although, yeah, the overlap is not perfect. Whereas if you do the same analysis for our multiplicative interactions, the overlap is much, much nicer. So before jumping to conclusions here, one could argue that maybe, in our nonlinear dendrite case, we didn't use enough neurons, or maybe our implementation is not really good enough. And this is probably the case, right? Although we have to say that a similar thing was observed in the Thalmayr 2016 paper, where they used thousands of neurons and better nonlinearities. So what we can conclude from this small experiment is that when a dynamical system is fully specified by second-degree polynomials, we have a significant improvement in precision. Moreover, I want to briefly show you that these networks are also extremely robust. In fact, if you kill up to 90% of the units, you still have a very, very good output. So as a second takeaway from these slides, you can see that the multiplicative spike coding networks are very precise. And similarly to the original spike coding networks, they are also robust and efficient. Now, you rightly might ask me, we have seen second degree polynomials, right? How do we implement arbitrary dynamical systems? And to do this, well, we know that polynomials can be used to approximate any bounded function to arbitrary precision. So again, starting from a polynomial dynamical system of any order and under the same assumptions as before, we expanded on our previous derivations and found a solution that essentially requires higher order multiplicative synapses. This means, as you can see in these schematics here, that you essentially need synapses that can sense 3, 4, or even more coincident presynaptic neurons that spike together. So this is very nice in theory, and you can implement it, and it works very well. But we reasoned that this might be a bit unfeasible from a biological or a neuromorphic perspective. So the question here is, can we avoid them? Can we avoid these high-order interactions? And it turns out that we can. The details here get a bit more technical, but the idea is that one can derive networks of neurons that approximate nonlinear transformations of their inputs. And these networks can be stacked together so that you can use only pairwise multiplications to carry out high-degree polynomials. And I want to show them in action here. I just want to show a small example. We can implement a double pendulum for small angles, which is an approximation that requires third-order multiplications. And we implemented it with two networks that have only pairwise synapses. And you can see in these plots, essentially the network output tracks the theoretical solution very, very well. So the third and final takeaway from these slides is that we can approximate nonlinear computations using only second-order multiplications, but this comes at the cost of stacking multiple networks together. So this is nice and good in theory, and we have also seen that they work very well. But you might wonder, how feasible are these multiplicative networks from a biological perspective? Because in fact, from a biological perspective, there might be some concerns, starting from the fact that you need the existence of multiplicative interactions, right? And here I'm just giving you some experimental reports that have described effective multiplicative interactions among neurons. And there are also some potential mechanisms that are known about how these might be implemented. So another potentially thorny aspect is the connectivity density, which is generally, when you derive them, is usually all-to-all. And it turns out that these requests can be relaxed quite dramatically if you allow the decoding matrix to be a bit sparse. And I invite you here to read our paper, where you can find many more details on that. And the last final aspect is the necessity of having multiple connections among pairs of neurons. And this is something that has been reported, again, in experimental and reconstruction studies. So it seems to be not too unreasonable. So to conclude this part, I would say that our multiplicative networks seem to be fairly reasonable from a biological perspective, and we think that they could lead to understanding of computations in real biological networks. So to conclude, I want to leave you with some food for thoughts. The first is that we think of these multiplicative spike coding networks as representing the ideal interactions for nonlinear computations, and they give us an idea of the potential computations that can be implemented in spiky neural networks and the limit on their accuracy. But more importantly, they define exactly how you can combine local nonlinearities to achieve network computations, and this was fully derived from first principles. And finally, we think that these sort of networks could be interesting from a neuromorphic perspective due to, well, the many cool properties that we talked about. And since we mentioned neuromorphic implementations, I want to leave you with a small mention of some future avenues, some ongoing work about controlling dynamical systems, and many, many more projects that are coming from the Keemink lab at Donders. So with this, I want to leave you. I want to thank James, who was a student with me during the 2019 Computational Summer School. And we worked under the brilliant supervision of Bill and Sander on this project that eventually went through peer community revision, and we are very proud and happy to share this work. So please feel free to get in touch, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for the great talk. I believe our top question has been answered, but I'll go ahead and reiterate it. I'm thinking of biological counterparts for the synapses, for excitatory, glutamatergic, one's fast, AMPA, slow, NMDA, multiplicative. You talked a little bit about what the biological counterparts for multiplicative might be. Can you comment a little bit more on that?
Yes. So there are... am I still screen sharing? Can I go back to that slide?
Yes, you're still screen sharing.
Okay. So yes, there are some known mechanisms, right? For example, well, synaptic clustering, shunting inhibition. Here, there are several biophysics models, and also there are several reports, and I invite you to look at these papers. They are very, very nice. What I can say about the biological implementations is that essentially what we are requiring here is a very, very precise multiplication, right? So from a biological perspective, you might run into troubles, right? Because the multiplications that have been shown in experiments are essentially very approximate multiplications. So something that is also an ongoing project is to see if we can, essentially implement these networks using some more realistic multiplicative synapses.
Great, thank you. So another one of our questions from the audience. So you talked about going from a dynamical system to the SNN that can learn it. Can you do the other direction? If you have a specific SNN, what are the dynamical systems that it can learn?
Right. So what are the dynamical systems that it can learn? So in our case, we are not learning anything. We are really deriving everything from scratch, but still, essentially in our implementation, how we are implementing these networks, you can essentially implement any sort of dynamical system that is fully defined by polynomials. So essentially, anything that involves any degree polynomial, you can implement it from scratch. If you get the activity of the network and you want to do the opposite process, you want to see which dynamical system was implemented, that's probably a bit trickier. You might do it by looking at the connectivity. Maybe by doing the connectivity, you could work on that. But to be honest, I don't have a very good answer for this question.
Okay, and I think you hinted at this towards the end, but a last question from the audience. Your network can implement almost any dynamical system, and that's impressive. How about solving a real-world task?
Yes. So this is, of course, our networks are essentially almost toy models, right? So that's true. That's very true. We've been working on essentially implementing some Kalman filters or implementing some controlled dynamical systems. For example, the last small thing that I was showing was to control a double pendulum, to essentially you kind of mimic the behavior of the legs, right? You can give it a push, and then you can implement some limits, right? You don't want your shin to go above your knee or things like that, right? So there is potential, and that's ongoing work, and a lot of ongoing work is going on in the Keemink lab at Donders, and I invite you to get in touch with him and stay tuned for upcoming projects.
All right. Thank you very much for the fantastic talk.
Thank you.
That is the end of our first session. We are going on a 30-minute break now, but we'll resume with session 2 in about 30 minutes. Friedemann, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, I don't have anything to add. Thank you very much to all the speakers of the first session. Thanks very much, Katie, for moderating. And thanks everybody for staying on time. And we meet back here for Jutta Pohirasi's talk 5 minutes past the hour in whatever time zone you are. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.